City Council, Tuesday, October 11th, 7 o'clock PM. Announcement of the Open Meetings Act is on the wall, and there's also brochures over at City Hall if anyone is interested. I'll call the meeting to order. A roll call for attendance.
Stuart Creechy.
Here.
Aaron Booth. Here. Chris Rappel.
Here.
Patrick Nagel.
Here.
Carl Warford.
Here.
Ryan Ideas.
Here.
Okay, any comments from the audience on items that are not on the agenda tonight? Seeing none, we'll move on. Department head reports. Who do we have here? Joe? Some of them are in your packet, and some of them are going to be verbal, maybe. Go ahead.
The street department's been pretty busy this fall. Fall crack seal has been completed by contractor. City street crews will be out crack sealing designated areas around town here when weather permits and we're not too busy. The old street salt sheds on First and Orange have been burned down. I don't know if you guys have seen that. City street crews are in the process of grading the area, cleaning up the lot. The interior of the yard has been painted. The walls, the inside, the back storage room and the office have been painted. Crews are out removing low-hanging branches over the streets. Please be courteous and understand that this will be a mobile operation with minimal amount of advance warning. Watch for workers and respect their traffic control signs and signals. Kind of a dangerous operation. They're in the back of dump trucks. They're wearing proper protection, but it scares me. So please watch them. Concrete panel replacement work at First and Orange has been completed and opened back up to traffic. Sorry for the inconvenience with that. That was kind of a last minute call to get that done before it got cold. So we had some stuff going on that weekend, but made the decision to go through with it and get it knocked out. So it's opened back up now. The Wahoo Street Department staff, there's a couple of us going to a Nebraska Mosquito Control Convention in North Platte this week. We take care of 6 surrounding communities. We spray for mosquitoes. It's a really good convention that just spreads awareness and updates our tactics and how we control the mosquitoes and the equipment and the procedures that we use to treat them. So, the Wahoo Street Department has an opening for an equipment operator. We encourage anyone to apply, and we're willing to train the right person. They're going to need their CDL. We've had a few applicants. We'd really love to have a few more. So if the public knows anybody that's interested, fast-paced work. We do a little bit of everything, so really willing to train the right person, and would love to have a few more applicants to interview. Cemetery review, we put a new entrance sign up at the Greenwood Cemetery. It's completed and erected. I don't know if you guys have seen that, but it turned out pretty well. Cemetery staff just attended the Nebraska Cemetery Association annual meeting in Seward, and that they've never done anything like that before, so that really opened up the eyes to ways that we can better ourselves and better our cemeteries. We get a lot of complaints and concerns out at the cemeteries, so this is very important to me that we learn better ways to handle our cemetery issues and, you know, open to the public ideas. And we got some ideas, so we would love to get a cemetery committee together probably next year so we can discuss some of those options to get our cemeteries in shape. And that's about all I got.
Any questions of Joe?
Joe, how often do we spray for mosquitoes?
This year we sprayed 3 times.
Okay.
With not having the moisture, it really knocked down on our mosquitoes. Early in the season, we sprayed Ceresco and Wahoo about 3 times in about a month and a half time. They really weren't that bad this year. We encourage the public too, if they're bad at night, call in and we can make a round and spray.
What would be a normal year, 4 or 5, or?
It really just depends on the moisture. Standing water, that's where the mosquito develops. So when you have drainage ditches that are holding water, you have, you know, standing areas around, and we have quite a few of them in Wahoo. So you got the creeks, you have your ditches, you have your storm inlets and stuff like that. But being as dry as it was this summer, it was really a slow season, which was good.
Yeah, for
want to remind the council, brought it to our attention that we're not speaking loud enough for the public to hear. So just make sure you turn up the volume. Sometimes we think we're loud enough, but it's not always picking it up. Someday we might have a different system here, but right now, remember to try and speak up. I'll try and do the same because sometimes I fade. So, Cody?
Good evening. I don't have much to report on. We're in the middle of fire prevention. We had our open house Sunday. We had a pretty good turnout. Never fails. We usually get a fire call right in the middle of that. We were able to get out, put that fire out, get back to town, and continue on with our open house. So I think we had about 100 people come through, which is about normal for us. Sometimes we see a little bit more. Sometimes, 2 years ago it snowed in the first week of October, so that was a less attended event. But nonetheless, it was a good turnout. Had some pretty good demonstrations, some good vendors that came in and did some demonstrations. So it went pretty well. Fire prevention this week at all of our local daycares, preschools, and public and parochial schools. So we work through daycares and preschools at the start of the week, and then we ramp up towards the end of the week. Starting tomorrow, we'll be at the elementary schools here in town. So other than that, I have nothing else to report, other than it's pretty dry. I hope we get some moisture tonight. We've been out on four different field fires in the past 2 weeks, so hoping we get a little bit of moisture. So there's some other items in the agenda that if you wish to ask me later on, you're more than welcome to. So,
Okay.
questions for me? Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. You're up.
So I don't have a lot to report, nothing really formally. A couple things to call to your attention. I'm definitely not stealing Ryan Hurst, our utility manager's thunder, but I wanted to share with you so that you are aware. Last week, Ryan and one of our linemen were up at the school during the lunch hour and had a table, and we're meeting with some kids. They also, just encouraging them to explore, it was specifically public works, utilities, as career options. They had, we do have a student that's participating I think it's called the CEO program that they have through the Wahoo Public High School. And they've been that individual has been able to experience a number of utility situations, specifically with the line crew. I think that's where he's interested in looking at a career, but he's getting exposure to water, wastewater, natural gas, all aspects of it. And so I know Ryan is very interested in that and wants to continue to have that available to students. So we have that. We are wrapping up most of our construction projects for this year. The 2022 overlay project, I think we have a walkthrough scheduled for later this week for the final punch list, if I'm remembering correctly. May not be. But one of the things I would like to do with that project is to follow up with all of the residents in the area and get some feedback on the things that we did well, the things that we could improve on, and maybe areas, identify if there's any final areas of concern. I think it's been a very successful project, at least one of the most successful that I've been a part of here. So I think it's an opportunity. We had good communication with everyone, and I just want to follow up and get some feedback, see how we can do the next project better. The end of our fiscal year was September 30th, so I'm working to get all of the information prepared for the auditors. They'll come in the week after Thanksgiving to do their annual audit. Again, it's one of those statutory requirements, not that it's not necessary, because I think that having that oversight is important, but we spend a fair amount of money on an audit report that doesn't always get viewed by very many folks. So we do that, and we have end of the year reports that we're also putting together. We have we have Keno end of the year, we have a TIF end of the year, an occupation tax end of the year, and so we're working on getting those wrapped up. or completed.
Any questions? Okay, so there's some other reports in your packet. Look through those as you have time, I guess. We'll move on to the consent agenda. Any questions there?
Just an update on the trail. I mean, they're just getting started with this initial bid of 49,000. Have they found anything
So-
out of ordinary?
So this work is actually, none of this is for any of the trail work that's done. You'll see there's this page. And, the work that was done, the contract that we had with Gano was for the abutment work on the Chestnut Street, the Wahoo Creek Bridge, as
Okay.
well as the guardrail project. On the trail, they have done some work. The pay application hasn't come to us for consideration yet. When they got in there and started their work, there was, additional damage that was identified, and because it's a FEMA project, the wheels kind of had to stop, and we had to go back and regroup, identify the extent of the damage, get the authority to move forward with that, and so that's in the process of getting approval.
So abutment is really paid now and guardrail is paid.
Yes.
I'd make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second? Second. Paul, any other questions? Seeing none, roll call.
Creachy,
Yes.
Warford,
Yes.
Ideas,
Yes.
Root. Yes. Rappel,
Yes.
Nagel.
Yes.
Thank you. Next item is discussion item not requiring any action, but I think it's important that we hear a little bit of what was discussed and what our representative to the League of Municipalities learned at that, so I'll turn it over to Karen Boop.
Okay, I'm Karen Boop. I'm on the City Council, and I wanted to share with all my friends here at the table what I learned at the LARM conference. And I've been to all of the conferences since I got on the City Council, and I've learned a lot every time. This one was absolutely the best I've ever been to. And I have a supply of black bags that say LARM on them too.
This is LARM is the insurance part, the League of Nebraska Municipalities.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
The league. The one thing I was mostly interested in was the creative district, and I had mentioned this before, and I was a little miffed that Ashland got to be the first city in Nebraska to have a creative district. This was some legislation in 2020 that the Nebraska Arts Council wanted to create creative districts program showing the arts as an economic driver. When we create this, there is a defined geographic area with probably more of the concentrated programs, but it also will include things like at the school, the Performing Arts Center with plays, programs, musicals, things that the high school kids are doing. So primarily it'll probably be downtown. Currently Ashland, Benson, and Brownville have creative districts in the state. And what we want to do here is to attract artists and creative enterprises, encourage business and job development, establish the district as a tourist destination, and preserve and reuse historic buildings, and promote the district's cultural and historical heritage. Some of the benefits here is a certification and branding materials, and I was just at the DRAW meeting before I came to here. DRAW stands for Downtown Retailers Association of Wahoo. And it is kind of the downtown folks that get together, and they do some really creative things, and they talk real fast, and I don't get everything written down. But in terms of things that are coming up, like the Merry Markets and Saturday after Thanksgiving, and all the things that they are promoting for downtown, and they're wanting to make Wahoo a destination. That's one of the goals. It's very complicated, all the steps that you have to go through to get to the point of even applying for a grant. It involves being in a program for 2 years with the artist, minutes of all the meetings, the workbook of the application for the grant is 45 pages long and detailed. The instructions for the 45 pages is 17 pages long. So it's a complicated thing, but it's certainly not anything that's going to happen overnight. And basically, if we develop an arts council in Wahoo, we have to be meeting and so forth for up to 2 years before we can even apply for this first grant, which is $10,000. And then you have to be recertified every 5 years, renewed with that. Once we get this developed and we have some support and some growth, then we can apply for the Creative District Development Grant, which is $250,000. So it's definitely worth looking at and planning for in the future. Let's see. The gentleman that I got to know from Ashland, Caleb, is the executive director and economic development in Ashland, and he spearheaded a lot of this, a lot of what they did to get to have their creative district. And of course, another thing that the league was, they're looking at millennials, those young people in their later 20s, early 30s, that have all the time and energy to kind of make things happen. And Caleb falls right into that category. They did have a bylaws meeting the day of the conference, and it was that evening, and he told me that I could come to Ashland. And I said, well, I don't want to hone in on what you're doing or take anything away from you or whatever. He says, no, he believes in R&D, which I thought was research and development. And his take on that is rip off and duplicate. So he was very humorous, to kind of take me under his wing a little bit and show me about these things. So I'm really pretty excited about it and kind of want to see where it goes in terms of developing that. I know one of the requirements on the panel is that there be a city government representative. So of course I've asked the mayor if I could be that person, unless one of you guys wants to do it. So that's kind of the main thing. Now I can kind of see with maybe developing the apartments and those kinds of things that might be happening downtown, and all the millennials may be renting those. These are some crazy ideas that they had that brought enthusiasm to their community, which, I don't know, I didn't quite go along with them. But they had pillow fights. They would build a giant Jenga and play that. They took the swimming noodles and had jar stir events with the swimming noodles, and they had a zombie walk. So Halloween's coming up, we might want to do a zombie walk. But that's the main thing that would, and I've talked to a number of people about this, and everybody that I've talked to is really pretty excited about it, and they're all, kind of artistic people that want to get involved in that. So that's what we got going there for the creative district. Now, the other thing that I gave you is this information on the astronaut Clayton Anderson. He grew up in Ashland, and he was a guest speaker at, he was the primary keynote speaker, I guess they call him. And so he was there, and I mean to tell you, it was just hilarious. His absolutely the funniest, speech I've ever heard, and he's just really engaging. And some of the pictures that he had were in the space capsule or the space station, and of them doing really goofy things. And he said, "This is your tax dollars at work." So they were having quite the fun in there. Now, he has become the CEO, director of the SAC Museum over by Ashland. So it's been a while since I've been there, but I'm thinking he's doing, really all kinds of neat things there. Now, he's written 4 books, and of course, he had those there where he could sell them. But he also autographed books for people. So our library does have the 4 books that he has authored. The ones I picked up were The Ordinary Spaceman. When my grandson and his friend were like 12 or so years old, I would take them to the SAC Museum, and they would try to outdo each other about how much they knew about the airplanes and so forth. So they're 23 years old now, so I got them some books. But this is so neat what he's written in these. He says, to Lane, be your best always. To Kyle, he says, be extraordinary. And to Landon, he says, turn pages into dreams. So he's just an awesome guy. So before Christmas, and I have to give up my book to my grandson, I thought, well, I would read it first. Now, I don't know if that's cheating or not, but I've been reading it, and it's like a spy novel and a comedy and all kinds of things rolled up into one. It's really, I read a lot of books, and it's one of the best books that I've ever read. Now, one thing he did tell us is that don't tell me why we can't, show me how we can. So that's my take on Clayton Anderson from Ashland. One other part of this that this Lynn Rex, she's the executive director, and she happened to mention something, I think by Melissa's name. Anyway, I told Melissa, I texted her and I said, Lynn is talking about you. And she said, well, did she say anything good about me? And so I caught up with her, at another time, and I told her who I was and that Melissa was our city administrator. So this is what she said, and I quote, Melissa is an extremely talented person and the best administrator in Nebraska. So there we are, guys. So kudos to Melissa. Now, Melissa just mentioned something about the audit and how much time that takes and that kind of thing. There was another program, and it was on protecting your financial assets and waste, fraud, and abuse. Some of those things that I found the most funny, and these were some situations that were discovered with treasurers or city administrators. The chief of police in Ashland, he clocked in 14 hours, in Oakland. He clocked in 14 hours in Oakland and 14 hours in Lyons, Nebraska, at the same time. So he was collecting there double the amount on there. One other one was, and this is a town that I know, Upland, Nebraska. That was where my mother was born. It's outside of Hastings. And the person there was supposedly doing a lot of community improvement. However, she was doing personal home improvement. One of the other ones is Shields. This was the police department again. The Shields receipts. So they questioned $2,800 in gift cards. And the other one had to do with someone that ordered, on Christmas Day, ordered a liver cleanse and 100 canning fruit jars with lids. One other guy was pretty creative in his cheating. When you get a bank statement, he would take money out at the end of the month, and then he could wipe that out at the bottom of the bank statements. Well, you might know that, Kurt. Of the bank statement, and then it didn't show that he was skimming any money. So those were some things about the audits. Those are just some highlights, but I was really, just really thought it was one of the best conferences that I had been to. So the books are in the library. I would suggest that you find them to read. And there'll be a test next week on this.
Thank you. Appreciate the information and the update on the creative districts. I forgot that was the name of it that we had talked about in the past. It's not necessarily an action item tonight. I think there's some work to do before we sign on. I think we need to sign on. I think we've got to figure out how much of it's city load, how much might be economic development, and those types of things. I don't know if we can have something by next meeting to talk about, or are we talking a couple weeks or months?
Depends on what Christina can take on.
Well, it's not something we have to do right away.
Okay.
But I think it's important for us to get in line and at least find out what it's gonna take for us to do that. And I know Caleb, he's a ball of fire. I think Teresa's a ball of fire that's been on longer. She's a little older, I'll put it that way. So, within the staff, work on it as you can, and we'll move forward and take the comment that Karen, she's the most, from the council, most informed at this point, for sure, so. Okay, any questions of Karen? Okay, no public hearings or old or tabled business. Action items not requiring a public hearing. Approval of the second reading and potential waiver of third reading for ordinance 2398 to provide for the conditional use for ground level apartments in C1 downtown district. The action that was taken at the last council meeting kind of stopped the rest of the process. I think we're okay making moving ahead to the second reading, but I would recommend we don't go to third and final until we have more information on what else might be going on or happening on that property, so, but whatever your council's desire is as far as second reading.
I have, the ordinance, the way that it, on first reading, says the conditions are subject to compliance with the transportation corridor requirements and compliance with the city of Wahoo zoning regulations requiring signage. I think the first one needs to be removed because that is not applicable in this area. This particular block is not subject to the transportation corridor requirements, which are along Chestnut Street, 15th, and other locations. Compliance with City of Wahoo zoning regulations requiring signage, I think that it could be added to that, including maybe addressing the issue that you kind of already decided at the last meeting, and that the parking would need to be met on site on the property itself. So those are two things that I noticed about this ordinance. Would recommend that you make change. There may be others if you want further discussion.
So to the council, could be, second reading could be as is, second reading could motion or action to change those and then vote on second.
I think it would make sense to update as recommended, so officially, Melissa, you're saying remove the transportation corridor from this conditional use?
Yes.
Yes.
And signage?
Signage,
Remove the language on the transportation corridor, but we need to add language about meeting no
On-premises
parking.
parking.
Meeting park requirements.
Understanding that there was a request made for conditional use to allow on-street parking to count towards the requirements, and that failed.
That needs to be added in there that way.
Would be,
That all
I guess to
parking
be
requires.
I think you know that, you know the,
Parking requirements,
Yeah,
that's.
all parking will be on premise only.
So you don't even need a conditional use for that, that's
No, but just put it in
No.
as a
It's just for clarification.
clarification.
okay.
Well, because technically the sign requirements, just like that, you have to
Yeah,
adhere to the
sorry.
sign requirements. I think it's just trying to make it doubly obvious to the applicant that those things are kind of key
Okay.
issues.
so it clears it up for the developer, yeah.
I would introduce the ordinance at the second reading with your
These
clarifications.
clarifications,
Yeah.
Second.
okay. Any questions on the clarifications? Ryan?
Not necessarily on the clarifications, I guess I had an additional thing I wanted to just clarify prior to, but if the project right now, obviously, based on our decision at the last council meeting, the project will need to have some sort of redesign to comply with the parking. How do we get brought along in that process a little bit? I mean, could the project take if we approved all three readings of the first floor apartments and there's a redesign happening, could we see a completely different project with an approval than what we're planning on?
Technically, yes. Technically, the design that was presented to you isn't required to be approved by the council. Because basically it was presented as a condition of the parking issue, right? And so technically speaking, as would be the case with any new building or commercial project / residential project, really it's all administrative. So it all is just a matter of what he wants to change within the confines of the building code and the zoning requirements. As long as it adheres to all those requirements, technically speaking, he can change it as necessary.
Does the current, I know we don't have a copy of it, I didn't bring it, does the current ordinance mention anything then about needing the commercial bays on Fifth Street?
no,
Yes,
it is in your packet, the current,
It
no, it
is.
does not
Okay.
specify.
It doesn't specify that,
It
I mean,
has to
I know
be-
that that's the design that we saw, but I guess as you mentioned that, that would be my concern is, hey, we're gonna take that whole Fifth Street building away and we don't have any of that commercial stuff because it's
Yeah.
coming in. And we're adding ground floor apartments, but get none of the commercial space that we wanted to go with.
Technically speaking, it's already required, so Travis would require it. because as
But
part of our
But then he
design
has to have
standards.
both.
No,
No, he would,
could-
if he put a structure on Fifth Street, he has to have first floor commercial.
Right.
If he chose to redesign it and have nothing on Fifth Street, then yes, he could do away with the commercial portion of the project. Now, you are approving, I guess the one thing you'd want to clarify is that you're approving it on one side of the street, right? I mean,
Right.
you're not approving it facing both the senior center and facing the
Okay,
park.
that's how it's written. For this specific application, it's only facing the park.
Yes.
Okay. So I like not having the other part tied to it. I don't know how I feel about that. Somebody else?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'd hate to have, maybe if, I hate to speculate, but if you'd said the first phase will be the apartments facing beach, and then realized, you know, given today's economy, interest rates
Right.
continue to go up, and maybe you say, hey, the commercial north facing on Fifth Street doesn't happen, then is that a project we would have been as excited about?
So I'm thinking like if the project redesign says, hey, we're just gonna go up in one building, eliminate the other building for parking, and then we don't have the building that would have the commercial space to go with it. I guess I would be less enthused about the fact that we turn the other street into ground floor apartments and lose commercial space, because then it's still owned space, which means the person who now owns it turned it into, or as it is now, continues to be a parking lot, but we don't have commercial space that we thought we were able to expand into. I hadn't thought of that until he said it, and I thought, well, yeah, I guess that does mean redesign. That's what we're asking him to do, I mean, it's what we're forcing him to do is redesign. And I just hate to lose that. I mean, the attraction of the project means we're expanding downtown in addition to solving this housing issue.
Again, I think from the council standpoint, at our last meeting, everybody wants a project to go through if possible. I mean, we haven't voted that way, but we've nodded that way, put it that way. So what would be a step that it should or could come back to the council before Travis signs off?
Well, ultimately, if the council's belief is that we would not approve this but for there being commercial lots facing Fifth Street, then what I would suggest you do is pass the amendment on second reading now. Make clear to the applicant that if there is a redesign change, that redesign change will require some commercial structures facing Fifth Street as a condition of this approval.
I was gonna say, is that something we could add in as a condition that it would require,
Yeah.
you know, some commercial space? I don't know, some isn't very specific.
Yeah.
Is that the legal
In a
term?
perfect world, you'd be approving the design. I just don't know if the applicant's gonna be prepared to
Sure.
finalize the design changes before the next reading or not. I don't know.
What does that do to the motion that's been made?
It really keeps it as is, and with the understanding that at third reading, you're gonna have to tackle this other issue. And the question being, I think at a fairness, you would wanna make sure the applicant's aware of what your expectation
Sure.
at the next meeting is in terms of, are you wanting him to bring the redesign plan that you would attach and approve as part of that, or something more smaller in terms of refined, and it being, there has to be 5 units along Fifth Street, which I think was the original design, or how particular do you wanna be? Yeah.
I don't know about 5 units, I was just thinking that space that faces Fifth Street, I would still like to see some commercial space there, but I also know, you know, the more we try to tackle this, the more we hem in what we're asking him to accomplish. We're saying, I want you to pack 50 pounds of stuff in a 5-pound sack, and then say, well, this is what you gotta do, it gets a little more complicated. But, I don't know, I'm okay on the second reading, but I definitely think there's some conversations that need to be had before we were ready to move forward in a final.
But why would you pass a second reading if there's still issues with it?
To keep things moving along.
Okay.
I think when we did talk about zoning changes, it was specifically to keep the downtown and keep those business bays there. And that's a good point, that if it's not built on Fifth, that maybe you don't have to have business bays there. And that really would not be, I don't think, what any of our visions were of this corner. But
Right,
we can communicate that.
the whole thing, you know, as we can acknowledge we went against the end of the day, we went against what planning and zoning had suggested not to do ground floor because they wanted to overall save downtown space, so I hate to think we're giving up more space to parking or something because, you know what I mean? So I definitely think that that's a conversation that needs to be had before final, but I'm still okay with the second reading as suggested.
We have a motion and a second for the amendments that you have, that
Yep.
Melissa has.
Yep.
Okay,
For the amendments, right?
Right.
'Cause we
Yeah.
vote
Yeah.
on the amendments and then vote on the second reading.
You vote on the reading as amended.
As amended.
Yep.
Right.
okay. Any other questions while we're moving forward? Okay, roll call on the second reading as noted, with, including the amendment. Okay, roll call.
Creachy,
Yes.
Warford,
Yes.
Luke,
Yes.
Grapple,
Yes.
Ideas.
Yes.
Nagel.
No.
Okay, it does pass. Number 2, approval of resolution 2022-20 declaring surplus vehicles, including a 2004 Ford Explorer. Seen its better days.
Yeah, this is the vehicle that Travis Beavers used for many years, and it's time for it to move to greener pastures.
Showing its age, yes.
Yeah, I'll make that motion.
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded to approve the resolution. Any questions? Roll call.
Grapple,
Yes.
Creachy,
Yes.
Ideas.
Yes.
Warford.
Yes.
Nagel.
Yes.
Luke.
Yes.
Number 3, approval of plans and specs for a new engine rescue truck for the Wahoo Fire Department and authorize calling for bids. There's some information, right?
Everybody have it? Okay, just
Go
a
ahead, speak to it.
real brief overview on this. So some time back, we developed a truck committee that consisted of members of the department, including myself. We went through and looked at what our needs are, what our wants are, and what our wishes are. And this list here is comprised of our needs and our wants, not so many wishes. We were pretty conservative on the types of things that we could have put on this truck, considering the market right now is not the cheapest. And the time frame to get these things built is not very favorable either. We're looking at 24 to 36 months. So we didn't want to make it too difficult to have built either. So what you have is the specs that the department felt would best suit the taxpayers of the community and then people that are in need of our services, and would also provide the safest avenue for our firemen and firewomen to respond to these said incidents. So what you have is the list that we have all decided on. So I guess what I'm asking is that if you've had time to look it over, if you had any questions, I would be more than willing to answer them for you at this point in time. And if nobody has any questions, I would ask that you guys entertain a motion to send this out for invitation to bid. So
What's your guess on cost? I mean, I don't wanna jump the gun, cause you gotta go out for bid, but this is not a cheap.
no, I'm going to throw a ballpark out there, probably $700,000 to $750,000. So,
Which would have been less a year ago and will be quite a bit more in 2 years.
correct.
So, John.
And those of you that all of you should know, especially the finance committee, one of the things I was tasked with when I took over as fire chief was developing a depreciation schedule, if you will, and trying to get a timeline put forth on the replacement of the current apparatuses at the city. We've moved through that, at a steady pace. We've replaced the aerial, we've upgraded some high expenditure pieces of equipment through some AFG grant funding. Those were really the two biggest things at the time. Engine is slotted to be replaced at 25 years. We're sitting at about 22 years, and to my guess, with a 24 to 36 month build period, that puts us right at that roughly 25-year mark. So So yeah, that's, unfortunately, you know, the cost of these things is, you add fire rescue before anything, and you guys have known that by approving ambulances and other vehicles in the past. It's kind of a tight niched market, so unfortunately, you know, they tend to jack the prices up with this type of stuff, so.
When do you expect to have something back to us?
As far as bids, I think, and I would consult with Melissa, you know, if we can get a packet put out, kind of get some of the legality stuff lined up, you know, a month or two. I don't know if that would be outlandish. We want to give the vendors time to kind of look through our list and obviously work with their,
Perfected?
yeah, work with their engineering company or their firm, or departments within their companies and, you know, put something together that we can review prior to even coming to you, so we can see if A, it's feasible, and B, it's reasonable, so.
Okay. Any questions?
I defer to you fire guys. What do you think?
Yeah, what the committee came up with, this is what they're looking for right now.
The engine that we currently have has seen lots of good use, but it's time, and with the lead time that is expected, it's better sooner than later.
It's, I guess something to add to that, Rappel, is, you know, with this vehicle replacement program or depreciation schedule we put out too, you know, we have to keep in mind that the older we go, the less we get in the used market if we were wanting to sell our used truck. And I think about that 25-year mark, you know, would still be useful to maybe some departments that don't answer as many calls as Wahoo does. You know, so for the city to benefit on selling that truck either to another department or trading it in as a used truck towards the purchase of the new one, you know, I'd like to see us try to get the most out of that truck that we can to put towards that. So thank you for bringing that up. So.
What's the
Yeah,
council's
I'd make a
pleasure?
motion to approve the specs.
I would second that.
Motion and a second to approve plans and specs and get bids. Roll call.
Warford,
Yes.
Creachy,
Yes.
Boot,
Yes.
Nagel,
Yes.
Rappel.
Yes.
Ideas.
Yes.
Thank you.
Number 4, consideration of a claim filed against the city of Wahoo for damage to a vehicle at Hackberry Park on September 24th, 2022. Everybody's looking at the screen. Must be something happening.
Gotta zoom in.
Pictures, but they're not here now.
There is a packet on the table that I printed off, so that you guys can see it a little clearer. So this is kind of a compressed file also.
So this is information that's on the screen is what was emailed to you. There's a lot of color photos, and so
Yeah.
you had them available online. This is the request for, it's a claim submitted by individuals that were at Hackberry Ball Field, attending a ball tournament, I believe, or flag football. When they were driving on 10th Street, they turned to the south or to the left to pull into a vehicle or parking area, and they said they suddenly dropped several feet, slammed the front end of the car to the ground. And so their request, their information that they're requesting, their coverage is included in there. There was a police report filed, and so you've had that available for you to review. The bottom line is they have submitted a claim, and Jovan, I don't know if you want to elaborate on the process that we should follow. This has not been submitted to LARM for any kind of review. Kevin did some investigation. I know Joe was involved in it, and the claimant submitted several photos with information. I think they're asking for approximately $1,500 worth of damage at this point in repairs to their vehicle.
Yeah, I mean, this would fall under the Nebraska Political Subdivision Tort Claims Act, meaning that they had to submit a written claim to a municipality, which ultimately has to be either accepted, denied, or basically tabled for further consideration by you as the city council. If it's accepted, then obviously you're indicating a desire to simply pay out the claim. If it's denied, then they are allowed to file a lawsuit to the extent that they're so inclined to do so and believe that there's a basis for that claim. To the extent that it's tabled, you have up to 6 months to review and consider the claim before you are required to act on it. If you don't act on it, then it's deemed denied and they can bring a lawsuit as a result. I don't know, is there an opinion of the staff at this point, based on its review and?
The staff recommendation that we discussed it at our department head meeting, and the recommendation from the staff is to deny or to turn it over to LARM to handle the, review.
Yeah, I don't see anything within the report that would give rise to me to be overly concerned about there being some tortious act and or negligence on the part of the city. The reality is, under the Tort Claims Act, there's a higher standard that a city is held to in terms of the city has to be knowingly negligent in order to be considered culpable for a claim like this, and so it's not like.
If you, scroll down. Sorry, Jovan.
And so, based on that, I'm always inclined to lean towards denial unless there's something very clearly wrong that we did and knowingly wrong that we did, which doesn't appear to be the case here.
So if you scroll back up to one point, where that stake is laying down is, yeah.
So right next to the road, driving through the ditch?
But it
One
was.
tenth.
It's a drainage ditch with a, I think it's a 10-inch culvert.
There's a better
It's
picture.
Basically kind of smashed, which could have happened then or probably prior to that.
Probably not the first person who's driven over it.
So there's a picture with the plastic blade
They
up,
put
and then
that-
there's a picture
They
knocked
put that
down.
back up after.
So it was actually put back up, maybe.
After the fact, probably.
I think our staff
Our
did
staff
put
put that
back
up,
up.
yes.
The pictures that are kind of separated by that other sheet, I believe were taken by Kevin.
Correct, yes.
The process of submitting it to LARM initially would do what exactly? Give them an opportunity to review?
It would, in my experience, alarm doesn't generally like to do a review until there's an actual lawsuit or there's a filing, basically saying, look, it's up to you as the municipality to decide if you want to accept or deny the claim. And on a smallish claim like this, I would tend to think that their opinion's gonna be the same. So I don't see a reason to wait for alarm response, because to me, if you deny the claim and they're that inclined to do something, they're gonna file a lawsuit and then you're gonna tender it to alarm for defense at that time. And they can decide if they wanna settle it out or not.
I'm having trouble picturing the area, I'm less about,
It's on
it's not
the,
whether or not we're
it's on the
legally
north side,
liable.
north side of the ball field. There's that little parking area.
I'm
there.
trying to think of that, there's a
So-
little fenced-in
Right,
area
right,
next
right.
to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
There's
is,
something-
that is a lift station to the left of the
Okay.
arrow.
Okay,
You pull in off of Hackberry, it's a crushed rock road, and there is a culvert that goes from the house to the north, not that one, to the left, goes under the road and drains into the drainage ditch that goes east-west and dumps into Dry Run.
I'm sorry, I'm just trying to make sure I understand. So you're telling me this person was driving across right here?
No.
No,
Oh, and then I touched the screen, that's my fault.
Yeah, it's a smart screen.
They
It was
turn
already,
it
we
into
were
this
looking this
parking
way.
lot right there.
Yeah.
Do you wanna
They
be
went
able
to
draw
try
it?
to
Here's flag football out here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was there.
They parked in the space of that lot that everybody knows you don't park in, basically. is
Right
what
there.
it is.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So there's a culvert that comes across here.
Right, and I was
And then
thinking
it-
those pictures were right here off of the road where that flag was standing up, so all I was thinking is, man, if they drove right through here, 4 feet off the road, a little less inclined to think, well, there's a road there, drive on that.
Yeah, what happens is, if you've been down when it's really busy, is cars will stack the entire way, there'll be a gap right there because of that. And so presumably, somebody went to try to go in between the gap, didn't pay attention and hit the culvert.
The flag was down, they didn't
Yeah.
see it. at the same time, we didn't know that it was down, nobody told us.
Yeah.
So
And that's where you
what
get
I'm
into that, we're not, unless it were knowingly negligent or intentionally negligent. Now, again, to your point, if there was evidence that somebody had called us and said, hey, there's something going on here, you need to fix it, and we didn't,
saying. And we didn't say
then that would be a different issue.
But since we don't know about it,
Yeah.
I say deny.
The fact that we put a stake in place there, does that increase our risk of a liability?
No, because the stake was already there, it was just down
Yeah.
previously, and nobody was made aware that it was down.
Yeah.
Because in his photos, it shows it laying on the ground. If somebody would have told the city about it, they would have, Kevin or Joe or somebody would have gone and got it, stood back up to mark it again. It just fell over from.
So the common example of this is if you drive through the city of Omaha, we all know there's potholes all over the place, right? The city's position, because they're following the Tort Claims Act, is basically, hey, look, if people aren't calling us and complaining about the potholes and the pothole isn't significant enough and or isn't significant enough to require change, then we can't be liable if something happens to your car. However, if there is a really big pothole and somebody calls us and then you drive into that after we've been notified, then we could be liable, right? Same thing here, unless there's something showing that we knew that the warning was down and that as a result we failed to act, generally you wouldn't be liable.
I don't even feel like the warning is, hey, there's a big ditch here, don't drive here, because it's not exactly the space you should be driving anyway.
Yeah.
I feel like that's, hey, this is the edge of the road, don't drive off this.
Yeah.
I mean, I would assume that's why that's there, not warning people that there's a ditch there, because
You're
it's not.
probably
road-
driving off the
Well, it
road
does
to
both.
park.
Right, right. Well, and that's not necessarily in the parking area either, that's the grass, not the rock. I don't know. I have this thing that I understand there's are we legally liable, but I also have this thing, is it the right thing to do? And
Yeah.
more and more I'm thinking, probably not. I feel like that's their own negligence for driving in not a road.
There's probably a secondary question of should the city do something above and beyond what this is to make it even more obvious? I don't know, but that's,
I think we can talk about that internally and
Yeah.
address that.
At some point, we start putting signs that say don't eat Tide Pods.
What's the council feel?
I'll make a motion to deny the claim.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion made and seconded to deny the claim.
I'm sorry, who seconded? All right, thanks.
Any other questions or comments from the council? Roll call.
Nagel,
Yes.
Raffle,
Yes.
Ideas,
Yes.
Booth,
Yes.
Warford,
Yes.
Krejci.
Yes.
Okay, number 5, ordinance to create a street improvement number 2022-01 for the Wilmer Ridge Subdivision project.
So there's, I think it's three items on the agenda regarding,
Fifth item.
right, 3 items regarding Wilmer Ridge subdivision. The first 2 are creation of a street improvement district and a water improvement district. The last is the resolution of necessity to essentially do the same, it's just a different statutory process that would create a district for stormwater improvements and sanitary sewer improvements. I know that the final plat for Wilmer Ridge has not come to you yet. The plan with this project and the conversations we've had with the developer is very much the same as North Highlands where and I laid that out for you in the memo, where they would move forward with the design. When the design is complete, it would come to the city council for review and approval. The city council would at that point essentially take ownership of the project. We would call for bids and then when the bids are received, make an award to the contractor. This is a significant amount of money and it's not cash that we have on hand, so we would be borrowing to make those improvements much the same way we have with North Highlands, but we have the ability through the creation of these districts to be able to assess the costs of that to the lots then. And so then when a lot is sold, the assessment's paid in full, our debt is paid down using those assessments. There is a portion of the project, some of the oversizing, like we did with North Highlands of the streets, where we're proposing that is a general obligation expense. But the majority of the driving surface, all of the water, all of the sanitary sewer, all of the storm sewer would be assessed to the property and collected then in the closing of the assessments. So in order to do that, we need to create these districts. I have, because we may potentially be moving forward with bonds to borrow, that's not a final decision, but we always want to make sure that all the i's are dotted, t's are crossed, so that we don't have any issues with doing that process when we get there. We can start these processes. There's some hearing notices or some notices that have to be published in the newspaper, but they have assured me that we are fine with starting this process with even before we have done the final plat, just to keep the ball rolling. So if you have any questions, other than that, I'll try and answer.
What's the next steps then? If we act on this tonight, then what happens next?
So on the street and water, you would, if you pass the ordinance this evening, then we would put a notice in the newspaper with a remonstrance period, and once that remonstrance period is complete, then we bring those responses that we receive from the public back to you for consideration, and then do your final approval or establishing the district. The resolution of necessity for the sanitary sewer and the storm sewer, it's kind of the same way, you introduce the ordinance and you set a hearing date, and then we publish that notice. It's in the paper, people have the opportunity to object to it, and then at that hearing, we bring forward any comments received from the public, and then you consider the resolution in its full. So,
And at some point in time, then do we get to understand the cost that we could be taking on with some of
yes,
these?
so we would be having some of that information come to you with the final plat and in the subdivision agreement. That is scheduled to be at our next council meeting. So before we move forward, I mean, the only thing that we're essentially doing now is getting the ball rolling and incurring some minor costs in creating these ordinances and doing the publication. There's no obligation to move forward. If bids would come in higher than what we expected, or you determine you don't want to approve the final plat, so.
And I'll give Melissa credit, because this is really a pretty smart way to handle this. And you look at Papillion, Gretna, Omaha, one of the things you had happening with urban sprawl outside those communities is a lot of SID, sanitary improvement districts, being formed, which are political entities with their own taxing authorities, and basically doing the same thing in order to finance those infrastructure improvements, just doing them internally and without oversight and control of the municipality. And it has led to, in those communities, a lot of problems and conflicts. And so the end around is saying, well, we don't allow SIDs inside of the city, but we can use this as a mechanism to provide that same financing benefit to a developer in substitution for an SID.
I think the North Highlands one worked pretty well. And if
Yeah.
we'll mirror that, then I'm
Right,
in
then
favor.
the North Highlands project is just kind of wrapping up, and we'll get the final cost, but I don't expect that there'll be any too much different than what the contract award was for. Then that's when we'll start the special assessment process on that.
Okay, thank you.
So the action you would need to do is, it's a lot of action, but adopting these two ordinances and then the resolution to create these stormwater districts, resolution of necessity, and that would establish a public hearing date, and I believe that it's gonna be, would be 30 days following publication, so I'd have to review the statute one more time to make sure we hit that, but I think it has to be available to the public for 30 days before we,
It'll be late November or late
right,
December.
yes,
So you need those ordinances individually?
yes.
And do you need them, or do we waive the readings, or is that something that we need to let those go so that you have time for publication? Or is that?
No, I think
This starts the process.
this starts
so
the
you
process.
typically
If you would,
waive.
So,
yeah, if you adopt the ordinance in full,
Waiving the readings would be in order.
yes.
Gotcha. All right, then I would make the motion to introduce an ordinance to create a or a street improvement district.
I'd second that.
Okay, is there,
And I'll make the motion to waive the 3 readings.
Second that, yeah.
okay, motion has been made to introduce, and the motion has been made to waive the 3 readings, which takes supermajority. Any other questions? Roll call.
Warford,
Yes.
Krejci.
Yes.
Ideas.
Yes.
Boop,
Yes.
Nagel,
Yes.
Rappel.
Yes.
Okay, done with that one. The next is the water improvement
The
district.
ordinance first.
Yes.
We waived the readings, we saw.
Oh, yeah, we gotta move, I'll keep forgetting that. Thank you.
One more time.
Final, reading on the ordinance. Roll call.
Warford,
Yes.
Krejci.
Yes.
Boop,
Yes.
Nagel,
Yes.
Rappel,
Yes.
Ideas.
Yes.
Now, we're ready for this water improvement.
Move to introduce an ordinance to create a water improvement district.
Second.
Okay,
Motion to waive the 3 readings.
Second.
Yeah.
any questions? You're on a roll. Okay, any other
Auto work,
questions?
guys.
Roll call on waiving the 3 readings.
Warford,
Yes.
Nagel,
Yes.
Rappel,
Yes.
Boop,
Yes.
Ideas,
Yes.
Krejci.
Yes.
Okay, now the final reading on the ordinance. Roll call.
Warford,
Yes.
Krejci.
Yes.
Ideas.
Yes.
Nagel,
Yes.
Boop,
Yes.
Rappel.
Yes.
Number 7, resolution of necessity for the creation of storm
Come on,
water.
Go.
Motion to introduce a resolution of necessity.
Second.
Okay. Does that take, that doesn't
That
take
is-
3?
This is just. one.
No, this is just introduction, and
Okay.
we really don't need a vote on it, because you're basically introducing the resolution,
Okay.
and then you're gonna hear the objections, which we have a period of time to collect, and then
Then we'll vote.
you'll vote.
Okay.
I thought we had to create the district with this, but
Took the
that's a
wind out of your sails,
resolution.
didn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's basically a resolution of necessity to, you're finding it's necessary to,
So we don't
So we
need to
just
take
move in
action.
second and then
Yes.
move on.
Yeah, move
Yeah.
in second on a
Stays
resolution.
Oh, there you go.
Roll call?
no roll call.
No, don't need a roll call either.
That one's confusing, I don't like it.
Someday I'll learn that. Number 8, ordinance to authorize city to obtain easements on the Wahoo Utilities West Easement Corridor project, including the use of eminent domain if necessary, and Ryan Hurst is here to explain that.
Hi, guys. You might recall a while back, we discussed this a little bit, but the Board of Public Works earlier this year moved forward with the design of a west easement corridor. So all of our utilities, we completed master plans of both our water, electric, natural gas, and wastewater departments, sewer collection system. In those master plans, the natural gas, water, and electric all identified the need for better redundancy and resiliency to the south part of Wahoo. All of our utilities feed directly down Chestnut Street to Heritage Heights, to the hospital, Country Club Acres, and they're essentially on a radial feed. And so we have a well out there, right, that feeds the hospital. But if there was a water main break, or a natural gas line leak, or a power outage, there's no other way to feed other than down Chestnut Street. So we began the discussion and the design of this easement corridor to allow for us to bring those utilities around essentially the entire expressway, right, Highway 77, and tie it back into Chestnut Street. Maybe the electrical may not follow up that north leg of it right away, but we want to have a utility easement large enough to do that. So the first step was, looking at these easements. We did go under contract with Great Plains Appraisal to help us to see what these easements should be appraised at. And we've also contracted with Midwest Right Away to help with the negotiating of these easements. But in further discussion with Melissa, we do need to create this ordinance that gives us the authority to acquire this property, and if necessary, through eminent domain. And I would allow Joven to describe that process more clearly, but I would just ask the council, as the governing body, the Board of Public Works is obviously funding this whole process through the Utilities Department. However, it would require city council approval as the governing body.
And to Ryan's point, really what you're getting at in doing this is a necessary step. Of course, we all hope that Midwest Right-of-Way is successful in voluntarily negotiating those easement acquisitions with all of those property owners, but we have to be realistic and understand there's quite a few property owners along that leg, and there's a potential for one person holding out, not agreeing with Great Plains Appraisal's view of what the easement is worth, and Midwest Right-of-Way isn't successful in suggesting otherwise. In which case, what this ordinance would be doing is saying, if you have that holdout, that individual that doesn't agree with the appraised value of the easement, you are authorizing the city to commence the process of acquiring through eminent domain or a formal taking of that utility easement. So again, not acquiring fee simple title to the property or taking the physical real estate from them, but acquiring that easement right so we could install all those utilities at some future date along that area. What that basically would entail is a process whereby we would file a petition with a board of appraisers. A board of appraisers are 3 individuals that are appointed by the county court judge to basically hear the evidence of what the property is worth in the eyes of the property owner, what the property is worth in the eyes of the municipality, and then render a decision on value. To the extent that either side is dissatisfied with respect to that ruling, then it's appealed to the district court, and the district court judge enters a ruling on the issue of value. But this has to come before any of that happens. Again, this is just a necessary precaution. We have no reason to believe at this juncture that this is going to directly result in us immediately filing some sort of an action in front of the Board of Appraisers, but we have to do this again anyways.
And I just want to reiterate, the purpose of this easement corridor and of these utilities is for whole system improvement to the rest of the community. We need this additional feed for redundancy and resiliency for a south part of town, and also if we need to get resources like that well out by the hospital to be able to feed back into the water tower, we have to maintain those resiliencies. So I just want to make it clear that is the purpose of this easement corridor and of these utility loop.
What's the width? It looks like a darker line around the north, and as it goes south, a little bit smaller line. Does the easement change?
The easement does not change. I believe we kept it at 20 feet the entire time. Yep. There may be 30 feet in there too.
Okay. And to clarify,
not-
we cannot use the state's right away.
We cannot use the state's right of way. We will have to get a state permit, not a right of way, but we'll have to get a state permit and a permit from Union Pacific to cross across their highway. So for example, where we're crossing across First Street, there we'll have to get a permit to cross there and a permit to go underneath the railroad tracks with our services. But no. We are intentionally staying out of state right of way, and if the state were to ever expand their right of way, then they would at their cost pay to move us to relocate. So that's another reason to stay out of state right of way. Protects us in the future if the state changes their right of way.
Council, any questions, more questions?
I know you've been talking about it for a while.
Yeah.
It's definitely needed.
And just so you guys understand the phasing, once we have this, we've already begun, we're under contract with Midwest Right Away, and again, we're allowing them to do the negotiating. So Melissa and myself are not taking part in any of those discussions. And so that process is moving forward over the next year, and then we're hoping to move into design of these utilities in 2023. and with the hope that we can construct them in 2024.
Process.
Mhm.
I would move to introduce the ordinance.
Second.
Introduce the ordinance. What's this take? Readings?
Waive 3 readings.
Waive 3
If it's-
readings?
Yeah, if it's applicable, I could waive the 3 readings. I don't see why we need to stop and have further discussion, so I would make that motion.
I'll second that.
Okay. Roll call, any discussion? Roll call on waiving the 3 readings?
Creachy,
Yes.
Nagel,
Yes.
Ideas,
Yes.
Warford,
Yes.
Grapple,
Yes.
Oop. Yes.
Okay, now,
Thank you.
approval
Thank
of
you.
the ordinance itself. Roll call.
Creachy,
Yes.
Ideas.
Yes.
Oop. Yes. Grapple, sorry,
Yes.
Nagel,
Yes.
Warford.
Yes.
Okay. Number 9, possible closed session for discussion of acquisition of property by the city of Wahoo. Is there a motion to go into closed session, and we'll restate that?
Yeah,
Just
again,
as it says here,
Yeah.
including Jovan, Melissa, and
yeah,
Christina.
yeah, we're doing it for the protection of public interest as a result of it being a real estate transaction. The idea being, this is one of those exceptions under the Open Meetings Act that says, look, we don't want to be overly transparent if we potentially are going to be acquiring or selling real estate in any circumstance, because that would hurt the taxpayers and the individuals that want us to be as efficient as possible, so we don't overpay for property and we don't sell for too little, and so we need to have confidential conversations in advance of that, and so that's the reason.
Make a motion to go into closed session, including Jovan, the mayor, Melissa, and
Christina.
Christina.
Okay,
I'll second it.
roll call.
Warford,
Yes.
Grapple,
Yes.
Nagel,
Yes.
Ideas,
Yes.
Creachy.
Yes.
Yes.
And we will not be making any decisions. If there's a decision,
Yeah.
we will come out.